But she lived in this tower block for many years, and I remember when I went to visit her and stayed in that tower block for a short while. I was going to give a talk in the Sri Lankan Vihara in Chiswick one day, and it was not that far from where my mother lived, so I wanted to walk. And I enjoyed those walks through the streets of London, especially in my robes, because I was always a radical. I wanted to surprise and stagger and confront people with my sartorial elegance of the brown robes. But I also enjoyed having fun, because people would look at me and sometimes, not knowing exactly what you were, dressed in these robes, these like what people used to call like bed blankets, that sometimes they would cross to the other side of the road. But I'd always take pleasure in wishing them good morning with a smile. And to an Englishman, if someone actually wishes you good morning, you have to say good morning back. It's psychological torture for them. But being a sadist, I think I enjoyed that. But anyhow, on this particular occasion, when I got to in the elevator, the lift, and got to the bottom, as the doors opened, I was the only one in this elevator. As the doors opened, I was confronted by an old lady who was covered with blood. It was like a scene out of a movie. I didn't know what had happened to her, whether she'd been attacked, mugged, or whatever. But she actually told me she'd fallen down a flight of stairs. And she must have been about 65 or 70. But she could still stand, and so immediately I forgot about giving a talk at any sort of vihara. It's more important. I'm kind and compassionate. I practice Buddhism rather than teach it. So I forgot about the talk and actually took this old lady upstairs to my mother's apartment, where we bathed her wounds, called the ambulance. She did have a broken leg, but because of the shock she couldn't feel the pain at the time. So we bathed her, comforted her, called the ambulance. But the wonderful thing which happened was that, because it was an accident, and because I sort of took her into my mother's apartment very quickly, my mother left the door open. And there was a trail of blood which was leading into my mother's apartment. And I was so pleased that in a matter of 5 minutes, I don't know how many people had come into my mother's apartment to find out what was going on and whether she was all right. And when they found out the reason why, that one of the tenants in this apartment block had had an accident and fallen over and was wounded, it was wonderful to see a community coming together and helping one another. Well, I was bathing the wounds because my mother doesn't like blood. And someone else was going to her house to turn her oven off because she had something in the oven cooking, and somebody was going to ring her daughter somewhere else. And everybody was working together so well. I thought, this is not a hotbed of crime. This is a community where people care about each other. And it was because they were all poor. They weren't afraid of one another.